A new era is upon us. Tangent Proptech unites founders, real estate and VC investors, urban leaders, and passionate creators who are improving our communities and cities. Join venture capitalists Jeffrey Berman and Zach Aarons and Proptech entrepreneur Edward Cohen, that's me, to learn about housing innovation, the future of work, and climate tech. We examine these themes through interviews and conversations with Proptech CEOs, real estate owners and operators, and venture investors, and how we can leverage tech and collaboration to help solve the housing crisis, figure out the future of work, and how to decarbonize the built environment. If you would like to get your company's or organization's mission featured on Tangent, email us at tangentcommunity@gmail.com. Hi, I'm Edward Cohen. Welcome to Tangent. Today on Tangent, we have Ross Piermarini, co-founder and chief sales officer at Symmetry, the new standard in multifamily and commercial real estate asset management and reporting. Hi, Ross. Where does this podcast find you?
Edward, how's it going? I'm currently in Chicago, which is where we are headquartered.
Beautiful. Ross, dress your asset management for less. Ross, you have a fascinating background for a Proptech founder. You come from the investment banking world where you focused on the real estate sector. We'd love to hear, your origin story and how you got to found and build Symmetry.
It's definitely an interesting story. It is not a straight path to get to where we are today. So myself and then my other co-founder, Jack Swoboda, we both met while we were at the Bank of Montreal doing investment banking. So he was in the mergers and acquisitions group. I was in leverage finance. And like you said, specifically, I focused on our real estate transactions. And coming out of banking, we actually started a business in early 2019, and it was related to security deposit optimization. So it was an interest rate arbitrage play on security deposits within multifamily. So essentially, we were helping owners take their security deposits, put them into high interest bearing accounts in states, cities, et cetera, that would allow for that, and then split the kind of extra interest with them. So obviously that entire product was very heavily dependent on interest rates. And when we had created it, we had kind of thought, well, we just came out of a once in every 50-year recession. The chances of interest rates going back down are pretty slim. Unfortunately, we forgot to incorporate a once every 100-year pandemic into that business plan. And so sort of that event caused interest rates to go back down to zero, more or less required us to shutter that business, even though it was also called Symmetry. And we sort of took that name, brand, and created a new business out of it. So we went back to the drawing board, and kind of both of us coming from the banking world, a lot of what we do was glorified data aggregation and visualization, right? We were taking large amounts of financial and industry data and operational data from our clients and distilling that down into easily digestible presentations to help kind of get deals sold. So sort of like a BI in a sense, in terms of what the end goal is, taking lots of information and using it to create some type of actionable insight from it. But even in doing that, the process, one, was incredibly manual and still is today. Lots of Excel, and like within real estate, a lot of the data is very siloed. And so we recognize it even in the requests that I would have to public company CFOs, asking them for their latest financials. And it's like pulling teeth for them to figure out where's the latest, what file's in it, who's been making edits, et cetera. And we kind of use that as a jumping point to get into what started off as kind of financial business intelligence, I would say, just given our focus and on the finance side. And it morphed into what is now a automated asset management and reporting platform that kind of incorporates all aspects of not just the internal asset management, what's required from a BI perspective there, but taking all of that information and using it to auto-generate different outputs to your stakeholders. So automating the workflows that come out of the initial data aggregation and visualization.
Fascinating. Talk about the issues that you're helping multifamily asset management address, the pain points of siloed and oftentimes disconnected data that has been collected and sitting somewhere on the cloud, if they're lucky in some cases. How did we get here as an industry, and how are you helping multifamily asset management sort out their disconnected data?
In general, in terms of how we got here, vertical SaaS and vertical software, people realized that they could create specialties within different parts of the real estate sector. And by doing so, you become an expert in that. And so being the best at a very specific thing means that owners end up having a number of different software solutions that they're utilizing that aggregates data in some form or fashion, that helps them automate work streams in some form or fashion. And so any given GP, LP, et cetera, can use a handful of softwares. For us specifically, there's a couple of different kind of pain points that we're helping to address depending on sort of the end user. So a lot of our clients are GPs, so the general partner, sort of like a pure play owner, if you will, not focused on the operational side. They utilize third-party property management. And when they do that at scale, it can become pretty tough as it relates to the data standardization, just because, and just to give an example, like we have a client who has 10,000 units. Those units are spread across 12 different property managers. Those property managers use, I think, 5 different property management systems. So think like Entrata, RealPage, Yardi, ResMan, AppFolio, et cetera. And so when the data is coming in all shapes and sizes from these systems, it's very hard for them as owners to have an understanding of portfolio performance on an apples to apples basis. Because if the data coming in doesn't look the same as a different system, it's really hard to understand the performance and compare those assets against one another. The next sort of layer, if you will, from a customer perspective is on the vertically integrated side. So those clients that have their own property management in-house, it's less about the data standardization aspect because they're only pulling in data from one single connection. Theoretically, the data should be relatively clean. I think there's always going to be some cleaning up, and it's part of what we do is during an onboarding, we'll do a full data audit, data cleanse. But for our clients that are vertically integrated, have that operational side to their business, the focus is a little bit different, right? They're much more concerned about the actual operations of the asset. So more timely and actionable insights is hugely important to them. And then the next step for that is the ability to automate the work streams that they incorporate. So when you're vertically integrated, you've got a bunch of different reports that you're creating, both for the assets themselves internally, but then also for stakeholders. And a lot of the vertically integrated guys also will do third-party property management. So they have to report to a bunch of different owners that are expecting different types of outputs. And so for them, a lot of the benefit comes in automating the report generation for those different use cases.
Super interesting, especially for the GPs, the sponsors, and the vertically integrated owner operators listening to Tangent. Talk about the actionable insights that you're providing to your multifamily clients to help improve their asset management and their bottom line at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it can come from a couple of different avenues. I think first and foremost, especially as you think about the GPs and the access to data that's kind of become the norm for them. A lot of them, when you're using third-party property managers, they're getting reports at month end, right? Once financials have been finalized. So call it financials get finalized 15 days after month end. So that's 45 days from the start of that month. It's really hard to be proactive in your decision-making capabilities when the data that you're getting is coming 45 days after the fact of the start of that month. So the very first thing that we do is help give them more timely data, which allows you to be proactive. But we also bring in both the financial and the operational data and provide different insights, analyses. We'll run different dashboards for them depending on the KPIs that they want to track and utilize within their business. We've done anything from utility recovery analysis. We had a client that actually just did a trash analysis within our platform that allowed them to realize a very large portion of the properties, even though they use the same trash provider across the whole portfolio, their pricing on a per unit basis that they were getting was vastly different. And so they're able to use the analysis we put together to renegotiate that contract across the whole portfolio and saved 125 grand on an annual basis.
Insane. And these are insights that are just sitting there waiting to be discovered, basically. But with so much data across different jurisdictions, across different partners, it's hard to kind of visualize that apples to apples.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do is just trying to simplify things for people because the data is there, but there's so much sort of paralysis by analysis, if you will, within any sort of business intelligence tool where, yeah, you can technically do anything and everything. But when you provide it to people in an area where it's like, here's just a massive amount of information, it kind of just confuses people. They're not really sure what to look at or what insights they should be taking out of it. So part of what we do during that process of any sort of client onboarding is we stay very involved, not just in the onboarding piece, but in an ongoing perspective, so that we can help them understand how to best utilize the platform, keep things super, super simple, intuitive, and really just feed it to them so that they don't really have to do much as it relates to any brain damage on the analysis side.
Absolutely crucial. I love that from, not only your hat as a co-founder and as a chief sales officer, but also working together with, the Department of Customer Success to really establish that feedback loop, right? Make sure you're constantly creating value and, developing the product roadmap together with your clients and partners.
Customer success, I think, is one of the most important aspects of our business. There's certain things that we do that are differentiated from a purely product standpoint, but I think where we really provide value to a lot of our clients is the relationships that we create, our willingness to stay involved, to help them in what we do on that customer success side. Because like you look at like a Power BI, which is you can do anything and everything within a Power BI if you understand the full capabilities and how to work it, et cetera. But you kind of need a PhD in Power BI to do that. So from our perspective, we just want to stay involved, get them understanding where they can add value within our platform and really just make their lives as easy as possible.
Power BI, you're referring to Microsoft's tool?
Yeah, so Power BI is obviously a generalist tool. Ours is real estate specific. So everything within the platform is very specific to the needs of real estate clients versus Power BI is more like a Tableau where it's a generalist BI platform that I don't want to say there's a coding component, but some type of aspect where you have to understand how to warehouse the data and then utilize that data and create different charts, graphs, et cetera. And it's a very flexible system, but it's also a very complex system. And so it requires somebody having pretty intense knowledge of how that system works, which I think for a lot of people in real estate who just want the insights fed to them because they are very busy during the day. They're trying to find deals, especially in a market that's really, really tough to make deals pencil. They have other things going on. So trying to give them as easy access to the data as possible is hugely important.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it kind of the promise and the value that Symmetry brings of eliminating hundreds, if not thousands, of human hours, for multifamily operators while collecting, analyzing, and reporting on their data, it's kind of lost there.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I think if we didn't do what we do on the customer success side, the usability of the product is just so much lower. If you just hand any, and this is not real estate specific, but anyone a BI tool and say, here it is, go figure it out, the chances of them actually utilizing it is probably pretty slim to none. And so we make a conscious effort to provide the value that we say we are going to provide. And I think that's been well received by a lot of our clients. We've yet to have a full-time client leave us yet. And so I think customer success is a huge component of that.
Support for this episode comes from Berkadia's BeEngaged, where real estate meets entrepreneurship. Imagine an ecosystem of founders, industry professionals, and capital providers dedicated to redefining the real estate space. Berkadia's BeEngaged program enables Proptech founders to pilot the most promising technologies and gain insights directly from industry insiders. Berkadia's BeEngaged evaluates the most promising real estate startups to identify solutions based on real pain points from its clients, partners, and the built environment. Founders gain access to Berkadia's deep expertise into some of the largest real estate companies and industry partners like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. The BeEngaged Lab provides a collaborative world where startups, industry leaders, and capital providers come together to test real-world applications. And with the BeEngaged network, you're not just observing innovation, you're part of it, gaining access to cutting-edge technology and mentorship that can drive your business forward. Clients can pilot these cutting edge technologies in a low risk environment, providing feedback that directly influences startup roadmaps. It's not just innovation for the sake of it, it's innovation built around solving real estate's biggest challenges. Ready to take your impact to the next level? Head to berkadia.com/beengaged and join a community that's shaping the next wave of real estate technology. That's berkadia.com/BeEngaged. Earlier this year, Symmetry joined Berkadia's BeEngaged ecosystem. We'd love you to talk about the benefits from joining a tremendous accelerator program that Berkadia has put with their BeEngaged platform.
The BeEngaged partnership has been great. First and foremost, the benefit is just the vast scale that they have and exposure that you get from that scale. Can be anything from every time we've gone to different conferences, they're either hosting something or they have a booth and will help kind of display us and others. So just the exposure piece is big. They're such a massive player within the real estate space. I think they did something like, I want to say since 2010, they've done like 100 billion worth of mortgage transactions, which is a massive amount, which means they have a massive reach. They've done business with most of the people in the industry. And so when you're an early stage startup and you're looking for exposure at a relatively easy way, so instead of paying hundreds and thousands of dollars on the marketing side, utilizing a partnership with Berkadia can help do that for you. The other aspect that's more specific to the BeEngaged program is that they just have a ton of different services and capabilities that they offer to help with early stage startups. So it can be anything from like pitch deck review. They have a full tech team if you need sort of tech consulting or want them to review any aspects of your tech architecture. They obviously have a big capital raising network. And so if you are capital raising, they can help put you in touch with different parties there. General mentorship, if you will. So there's a lot of different ways, depending on what your needs are as a company, for you to benefit and leverage the capabilities that Berkadia and the BeEngaged program specifically have.
Fascinating. And for a startup that has been bootstrapped like yours up until now, it seems like a great match.
Absolutely. I mean, since the pivot and sort of as a reason from the pivot, we have always stayed pretty lean and very cash conscious, just because we know that quite literally anything can happen. And so we try and have kept that front of mind, and being able to utilize the resources within Berkadia has been a huge help for us.
Talk about the long-term vision. And I know things can change a lot. Our industry naturally depends on a lot of external factors beyond our control. But talk about where you see Symmetry fitting into the evolving Proptech and commercial real estate ecosystem going forward.
Long term, our goal is to just continue to automate as much of the reporting work streams as possible. And so what I mean by that is, obviously we have the asset management side. So what's done internally for you to aggregate, standardize, visualize that data, but then using all of that to further automate other work streams that go outside of the firm. So whether it's reporting to lenders, investors, any sort of external stakeholders that you might have. So one of the things that we've done and been working on is having a fully baked investor portal built into the platform, so that we can take all of that information that we have on the asset management side and use that to auto generate reports for investors, but have it still be linked in one single place, so that you don't have two different systems. Everything can be completely automated. And so figuring out how to continue to automate more and more of those external reporting work streams, I think is where we're likely to go in the future.
Let's talk a bit about asset management's rising importance, especially in a high interest rate environment. First, why has asset management not been as, looked at in the past, and, the shift of focus from, rent increases across the board to, expense side optimizations, for example?
It is interesting in that if you look at kind of the last 20 years, asset management hasn't really been a major focus for a lot of firms. I think a lot of that has to do with coming out of the Great Recession in kind of 08, 09, super low interest rates. Everything was kind of just going up. And so there was good cash flow. Markets were hot. Should there be any issues at any of the assets, it was a rising rent environment. So you could just increase rent to sort of hide any sort of other issues that you might have had. So you didn't really have to know. And obviously, this is a generalization of the problem, but you didn't really have to know all of the ins and outs of your business to be somewhat successful. And that has changed pretty drastically in the current markets. It's not only the rising interest rates, which have a massive impact on your cash flow, but in doing so, once those distributions stop going out to investors, investor questions increase pretty significantly. And so the burden that's placed on these owners by investors to get an understanding of what's going on has increased, which means they absolutely need to know at any given point in time what's happening within their businesses. You can't just sort of rely on a crutch of, well, I'll increase rents. We're not really in an environment where you can increase rents. There's lots of new supply. We're kind of what feels like a little bit maxed out on the rent side. And so you have to find other avenues to, whether it's different avenues for revenue generation or different ways to reduce expenses or optimize decisions. Having the data at your fingertips and in more or less a real-time basis gives you those capabilities versus previously there wasn't really a need. You didn't need to know on a daily basis every single little aspect. Now there's definitely owners and operators that were doing that and that are very high performing operators, but as a whole, it wasn't something that the entire market really cared too much for because it just seemed like an added cost that wasn't necessary.
Is it fair to say that, I'm not sure how many operators out there, but a low interest rate environment was making a lot of operators seem better or smarter than they were, or was maybe hiding some inefficiencies that I guess maybe weren't as low hanging fruit, or maybe they were, but they were just easier ways to increase the value overall, which is just keep jacking rent up?
I mean, potentially. I think with anything, when markets are good, like if you just think about traders from an equity perspective, when markets are good, anybody can theoretically look fairly good. The best people at what they do shine when things are bad, right? And so in current environments like we're at now, where it's challenging, it's just really tough with high interest rates. There's a dislocation between what sellers and buyers are seeing, and from a market perspective, it's really tough to make deals pencil. And so you've got to get creative. You have to have a really good understanding of your operations, especially at sort of a transaction level, and where you can pull different levers to, from an acquisitions standpoint, make things work, but also just from an asset management standpoint, figuring out how to get the most out of your assets and optimize performance.
Fascinating. Talk a bit about the balance between marketing and product delivery for an early stage company like yours.
And there's probably two trains of thought here. I think early on, call it 2010s, when a lot of the BI and other technologies were coming out, especially within Proptech, you had to sort of have the brand recognition and the marketing in order to build the product. So a lot of people marketed first, got the demand, and then built. And I think that potentially created a lot of issues and sort of resentment in the prop tech space in general, because people, owners specifically, were buying products that maybe weren't where they were expecting them to be from a development standpoint, because they're sort of developing after the fact. We took a slightly different route there, just given that in our eyes, real estate is so relationship driven. Even though it's the largest asset class in the entire world, it is a very, very close knit and tight industry. Everybody talks with everybody. And so we didn't want any of our current clients or any clients in general to have a bad experience with us or think that we weren't providing the value that we were saying that we could deliver. And so we spent the better part of 2 years just building product. And so we had a handful of beta clients that we sort of increased over time as we were adding new modules or asking for feedback, et cetera. And then we didn't release the product until it was what we deemed to be in a marketable state and something that was going to provide value from day one. Because our biggest fear was that we provide a product that clients don't think provides value, and they talk to all of their friends that are within the industry and say, hey, don't go with these Symmetry guys. Like, they don't do what they say they're going to do. The product's not very good. We didn't get much value out of it. That to us is detrimental to the business in a space like Proptech.
Absolutely. I think a lot of, and this may be incentivized oftentimes either by investors or just by, seeing what other companies have succeeded at that were doing back in the day, but pretending that you're bigger or stronger, that you're faster than what you are, might be hurting the actual value that you can really provide today.
Yeah, completely agree. I think there certainly needs to be an increase in transparency in terms of what these products can do. I mean, I've sat through obviously a lot of demos of other vendors' products, and anybody's product can look good in a demo environment that's completely controlled, and they make sure that it's going to look as clean and crisp as possible. When you go to onboard that product, when it's completely different, it becomes tough to scale that honestly. I think that at the end of the day, especially within real estate, owners are going to figure it out at some point in time. And we kind of got to that point, I would say, because as you got to COVID, so like 2010 to 2020 was a very different time to be building in prop tech than it is now.
This episode is brought to you in collaboration with Blueprint, the future of real estate. A few weeks ago, in September, Jeff and I participated in the largest, most global gathering of industry leaders and innovators leading the charge in changing the built environment, from construction to transaction, for 3 days of networking, learning, and ecosystem advancement in Las Vegas. With trillions of dollars of assets and the best global innovators under one roof, the future of the built world happens at Blueprint. Blueprint 2025 will take place at the Venetian Las Vegas from September 16th to 18th. Learn more and join the interest list at blueprintvegas.com. That's blueprintvegas.com. See y'all there. I want to hear a bit more about your chief sales officer role in the AI era. How are you nurturing relationships to create value that also translates into sales?
The AI component's super interesting. I think it's very early days, especially in terms of the utilization from a business perspective within real estate. There's certain applications that do make a ton of sense. You look at a company like Elise AI, where you're automating the leasing agent's initial calls via AI. I think that has a lot of good current use case. But in terms of the value that other products can get by utilizing AI, it's impossible to truly provide that value without the data itself being clean. So that's sort of like the first step to truly utilizing AI. And at the end of the day, AI to me is not going to replace the relationships that you create within your business. And especially within real estate, which is such a relationship centric vertical, creating those relationships is going to be hugely important now and in the future. I don't think that's something that's ever going to change. There's aspects of AI that can be helpful from like a process automation standpoint, but at the end of the day, you've got to create the relationship with the client. You're not going to be able to create a relationship via an AI. Maybe you can get an intro via that, but from a sales perspective, AI is not going to necessarily change how we do business outside of maybe helps automate some of the processes that we have on the sales side. To me, you're never going to get rid of the relationship first aspect, especially that's required within prop tech. I mean, it's a lot of things come up, and I think AI is at a point where, yeah, it's pretty good, but it doesn't truly understand different scenarios that businesses and that humans go through. And to have another person to be able to talk to, whether it's questions. So like you think about our customer success side, you could theoretically automate that. I don't think it'd be very appreciated from our client's perspective. They want somebody that they can talk to that can understand the problem that they're going through or what they're trying to solve. At a certain point, maybe AI will be good enough that it can replace that component, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that happening.
Ross, collaboration superpower. If you could choose one person, historic or living, to do a partnership with, who would it be?
A partnership in what sense? Like for our business?
For your business, in life, you can choose a partnership, anyone, historic
Uh,
or living.
Easy, boring answer is to go with somebody that's in the space that's already a powerhouse that you would have an immediate advantage, right? Like if you go with like a Marc Benioff who knows exactly how to sell B2B SaaS, right? That's what we do. I would guarantee that he could provide value to our company via a partnership. But from a more interesting perspective, it's probably to look at some of the historical things. I don't know how this person would potentially help, but I think it would be incredibly interesting just given they're such an interesting person and have so many different skill sets. I think I would probably go with like a Leonardo da Vinci. Obviously, bringing a painter probably doesn't have a ton of value to the company itself, but somebody that kind of thinks outside of the box. If you think about what he did in terms of his interests, and he was in the medical and the inventing space and building helicopters before that was a real thing. He to me would be the most interesting person to work with, and obviously somebody of that intellect in some form or fashion, I bet would come up with a way to help us from a business perspective. I don't know what that would be today, but it would certainly be an interesting opportunity.
Love that. I mean, Marc Benioff had some positive comments recently about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. So he might be now busy with that, but he does tune into Tangent. So maybe you were going to get a call from him.
Hey, we would love it. People that are focused on efficiencies, we love that. So maybe there is a partnership there to be had.
Absolutely. Ross, where can Tangent listeners learn more about Symmetry and connect with you?
Yeah, symmetRE.com. They can also message me on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty active on that site and checking it a fair amount. And other than that, you can also just email me. If you want to email ross@symmetRE.com, happy to get in touch and talk about whether it's you're an early stage founder, just have some questions about what it's like to be in the space. I think startups, especially early stage startups, is a fairly lonely environment. There's not a lot of people in my network, at least, like from a friends and family perspective, that understand the things that you go through, as well as obviously if there's clients out there, if they're a GP, an LP, a vertically integrated owner operator, and are interested in learning more about the platform and how we might be able to help make your lives easier, would obviously love to have a conversation.
That's SYMMETRE. Ross Piermarini, co-founder and chief sales officer at Symmetry, the new standard in multifamily and commercial real estate asset management and reporting. Thank you so much for coming to Tangent today and enlightening us with your journey, your vision, and your great product.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review Tangent, and share the show with a friend. This episode is produced by me, Edward Cohen. Thanks for listening to Tangent Proptech, and remember, collaboration is our superpower. So stay curious and always be learning.